We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. This is a live show, and if you have any questions you would like to ask, please send them in via the WhatsApp, the email address ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively give us a call here in the studio on 0203 515 0199, and inshallah we'll be able to discuss and answer your questions. I'm your host this evening, Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Ma'ar. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you this evening?
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
MashaAllah. Sheikhna, let's kick off with Salah. And you know, when it comes to Salah and praying, there's a lot of things to remember. The mind can, adrift sometimes. So during Salah, if one becomes a little inattentive to what he's reciting or she's reciting or so forth, how does that render the Salah? As in, does it make a batil? Do we have to start the prayer over again? Can we continue the prayer?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. When the individual starts his salah from the beginning, when he makes the intention and the niyyah that this is the salah, for example, as Maghrib, Isha, and then he begins the salah with Takbiratul Haram, Allahu Akbar, and enters the salah, he or she needs to keep this intention all the way to the end of the salah, till the one says Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. To have this intention, continuous intention, to the end of the salah. If, let's say, in the middle of the salah, suddenly he realized that he is, he's somewhere, he's away from the intention of salah, for example.
Okay.
That if they ask him, what are you doing? He doesn't know what he was doing, for example. It happens sometimes for those who forget, for those who have, let's say, in calamity, in misery, for example, they have difficulties. Sometimes it happens to them that they lose themselves in the middle of the salah. In such situations, if there's a cut in the middle of the salah in terms of intention, then salah becomes void and batil. So the one should repeat the salah again. You must keep the intention all the way from the beginning to the end of the salah.
Sheikhna, you mentioned Takbiratul Ihram. When we were in Hawza, we were taught that this is one of the rukns, first of all, in salah. If you miss it, then your salah is batil. It has to be there. But my question is, in regards to performing it, how do you perform the Takbiratul Ihram? Is there anything specific or special to do?
Yes, you must say Allahu Akbar. You have to connect between the Allah and Akbar. You can't say, for example, Allahu Akbar, Allah, and then you keep quiet and you say Akbar. You must connect these two words together in order to say the takbirah in the right word, of course. And of course, it must be in Arabic language, of course.
Mm-hmm. Sheikhna, if we have a traveler who's stranded, maybe due to some circumstances, they can't really afford to go back or even go forward. Are these people, or this person, are they entitled to zakat?
Yes, those who basically stranded, they lose their money, for example, let's say their ticket has been somehow cancelled, or they don't have the means to go back home. They're stranded travelers, basically musafirin, in which they can't really afford to go back home, and they can't really withdraw money or borrow money from anyone else. Let's say they are in a trip to Africa, to the savannah or to Sahara of Africa, and they get stuck there. No money to offer them a safe trip back to home. Then they can actually get the zakat to fulfill and pay for the cost of the return.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, excellent. Shaykh, a question from the WhatsApp. What is the best means of educating and culturing the self, and what are the best deeds one should practice?
The best thing is to oppose the one's desire, the ego basically. Because the nafs and the one's self is filled with desires. If we don't control it, then it will actually go out of its boundary and limits. The Holy Quran, for example, states with this regard, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. And as for he who fears the station of Allah Azza wa Jal and forbids the soul from desire, surely paradise will be the refuge. The ayah or the surah 79 verses 40 and 41. We have to control our desires. In other words, the haram, when it comes, I have to push back this haram desire and instead use the halal desire, which are available. In this way, if somebody made his best to control his desires, the haram ones, of course, the one can gain Jannatul Ma'wa. فإن الجنة هي المأوى. You can gain this location and place in paradise without controlling one's self, desire, ego, and so forth. You can't really reach this stage. For example, if somebody wants to live in a city, in a country that have its own legislations and laws, if you cross the boundary of these laws, you will end up in jail.
Yeah.
Or penalties will be issued and so forth. You have to respect Allah's Azza wa Jal legislations, laws, which are over and better and more wise than the man-made laws.
Ahsant, well said. Shaykh, like mentioning controlling the nafs and so forth, it can get very, very difficult, especially in times of anger. Sometimes we can't refrain from being malicious or showing animosity to someone. So my next question is in regards to animosity, that is there any room for animosity, or what is the Islamic position on animosity in Islam?
You see, the individual shouldn't engage themselves in such issues that waste a lot of their time. We are as brothers to each other, as mu'mineen, ikhwa, as the Quran mentions. So we shouldn't really go that further and try to create animosity, disputes, quarrels, and so forth. In hadith from our Imam Abi Abdullah As-Sadiq alayhi salam, he mentions that قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله ما اصطحب اثنان إلا كان أعظمهما أجرا وأحبهما إلى الله عز وجل أرفقهما بصاحبه. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم states that there are no two companions would be together. Allah would reward the one who is more kind to his companion, to his friend, the one who's more kind, more lenient. We always want this character and moral and ethical aspect to be in our life with our friends and family, to be able to show the best example to others by following the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, for example, that kunu zaynan lana, show the goodness and avoid the badness and so forth.
I see, mashallah, mashallah. Shaykhna, one of the prerequisites of when we pray in Salah, especially in Jama'ah, is that the Imam of the Jama'ah has to be adil. Now, according to his eminence, Sayyid Sistani, if I'm not sure or I'm not aware if the Imam of the Jama'ah is adil, can I, my prayer, can I pray it with the Jama'ah, or do I have to do it farada?
The Sayyid mentions that you must make sure that he is just and adil.
Okay.
It's a condition basically. Otherwise you cannot pray behind him. Also he mentions that you must make sure that other criteria are also met and conditions are met, such as reciting the prayer correctly, the Hamd Surah correctly in the correct Arabic manner. That's important as well. Of course, some ulama mentioned that the sign of adala in terms of the Imam of the Jama'ah is by asking those who pray behind him that what do you think of him? Do you know him? Is he adil? And so forth. Or by knowing the Imam himself, yourself, know this Imam and you pray behind him. So that should be fine. Otherwise, if you don't know him and you enter a mosque and nobody knows about him, you're a stranger in that city or village, for example, then you must achieve the adala, ihraz al-adala, as they say, the ulama. Ihraz al-adala. You attain this adala, so you can pray behind this Imam of the Jama'ah.
Shaykhna, who is, adil, a just person, according to his evidence? Says Sistani Hafadullah. I mean, what's the criteria of, acknowledging this person is adil?
Basically, adala means the one who refrains from all the forbidden acts and sins. The one who actually is away from committing the sins and disobedience towards Allah Azza wa Jal. And the one who has good character and akhlaq, in terms of ethics, as I mentioned. And of course, as I've said, if people know him locally, that he's a good person, a mu'min, we haven't seen anything from him, then khalas, he's adil, you can pray behind him.
Excellent. Shaykhna, when praying, we get to recite Surah Hamd, Surah Fatiha, then after that we always get a choice of which surah we'd like to recite in the first and second rak'ah. Are there any recommendations or any mustahab surahs that we should recite? And maybe what sort of prayers as well should we recite these surahs in?
Basically, in the first and second rak'ah for each salah, it's mustahab to recite on the first rak'ah after Surah Al-Hamd, Surah Al-Qadr. Inna anzalnahu fi laylat al-Qadr. And in the second rak'ah after Surah Al-Hamd, to recite Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Surah Tawheed. Okay. So that's a mustahab. Of course, if the one has time to recite longer surah, that's great, fine. We have some narrations about if you recite this long surah, you'll get this reward.
Okay.
Surah Al-Jumu'ah, Day of Jumu'ah, for example. Surah Al-Saf, Surah Al-Mulk, for example. If you can recite these long ones, even by reading from the Quran while you're praying, that's fine, to get more rewards. But the short surah would be suffice. And
in our community, we have this thing where for the Asr prayer, we recite Bismillah wal Asr in al-Insan. We always recite that one in the Asr prayer. And I'm sure there's plenty more different recommendations people, maybe Surah Fajr for Fajr time. Who knows? We're going to go to a short break, inshallah, and we'll continue our discussions after we join you after the break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Just a quick reminder to all our viewers that this is a live show and we do take in your questions. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask, and it doesn't matter what topic, or if you think your question may be a bit silly or a little bit taboo, it is our duty to do the research and also to find the answers for you. So we don't need to know your name, we don't need to know where you're asking from. Just send in your question. If you follow a certain marja and you want a certain answer from a certain marja, no problem, we can contact their offices and we can contact the official representatives of that marja and get you your answer, and inshallah we'll be able to present it on the show. Let's go back with Sheikh Ali Ma'ash. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sheikhna, a really interesting question coming, very philosophical as well, and that is, why should we abstain from haram?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, logically, if we look at the laws and the legislations of the countries today, they would punish for the one who steals, who commits an act of crime, stabbing people, for example, or terrorism, for example, speeding in the streets, and drinking and driving, and so forth.
Mhm.
Because there are consequences behind these acts of crimes. So to save the people, the humanity, from harm, from anxieties, from calamities, they put, as humans, put those penalties and punishments for those who commit these crimes. Allah Azza wa Jal is the wise, the creator, so He knows when the one commits adultery, there are consequences.
Yes.
Corruption within the society, the breakup of families, the loss of the lineage, and so forth. So when Allah Azza wa Jal says adultery is haram, gambling is haram, drinking alcohol is haram, it's all initially goes to us as benefits. And then, of course, in terms of the reward for the akhirah, that's something greater and greater. But to know that Islam made this emphasis on the wara'. Wara' means to abstain from haram. So you have taqwa, means do the good deeds and avoid and refrain from the bad deeds. But the next stage is the wara'. It means that only concentrate on refraining the haram and the evil acts. This is how the ulama, the mu'mineen, the sulaha elevated their perfection by wara', by abstaining from the haram. Even the smallest haram, they would avoid it. And even some ulama would avoid doing the makruh, the undesirable acts. Imagine to this extent that, for example, he wouldn't eat with his left hand, makruh,
Yes.
for example. So we have to make sure that we do our best to implement Allah's hukm on earth, within ourselves, our societies and communities, to achieve the happiness in this dunya, because when there's no adultery, when there's no drinking, when there's no gambling, the world will be safe. The world would be in happiness. And then, of course, the world of Akhirah and Jannah is immense.
Excellent. Inshallah, what you said, the message and the answers you've given can, be echoed throughout the whole communities, inshallah. Maybe we can make a change to make this world a more safer and moral place. Shaykhna, according to His Eminence, Ayatollah Sayyid Sa'id Al-Hakim, does a child or a son have to obey his parents?
The Sayyid mentions that yes, it is obligatory for the son or the daughter to obey their parents if the disobedience leads to uquq, which means to be ungrateful to your parents, to make them angry, for example. Then you have to follow their instruction. Or it could cause harm to them because of your disobedience. Otherwise, if nothing would happen with this disobedience, then it is allowed, but it's better for the individual to do the obedience and respect to his parents. That's a better option, of course.
Shaykh, what do our scholars say about sabr and perseverance?
Our scholar would divide the sabor into 3 stages. Number 1 is the sabor from committing sins. So there are sins coming, haram coming. Imagine there's temptation, lust coming, I avoid it. I lower my gaze, I don't look. That's a sabr on the ma'asiyah, on the sin. Haram money comes, I say no, I don't take it. Haram drinks come, I try to refrain it. So that's sabr on these committing the sins. The second sabr is on the ta'ah, on obedience of Allah Azza wa Jal, by praying, by going to Hajj, for example, fasting, paying the zakat and khums, and so forth. So it's difficult because if you want to fast, let's say 21 hours in some countries, in the middle of the summer, it's difficult.
Very difficult,
But
yes.
you have to have this patience and sabr to be able to achieve this wajib. And even salah, you have to wake up every day 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, in the middle of the night, dark, and
Difficult.
pray
And these
the
cold
2
nights,
rak'ah,
yeah.
especially cold weather, yes. So sabr on the ta'ah and worship of Allah Azza wa Jal. The third type of sabr is on the bala and calamity, that the one should have sabr when something happens, such as the pandemic. We have to have the sabr. Be patient. Inshallah, Allah would remove this pandemic from the rest of the world, and may Allah cure all those who are in hospitals and ill. So we have to have sabr and ask Allah Azza wa Jalla dua wa tawassul to Muhammad al Muhammad salamullah alayhim to remove this bala and pandemic, inshallah.
Shaykh, when it comes to salah, some of them are audible and some are inaudible. As in, some you say aloud, Salat Fajr, Maghrib and Isha, and some in silence, Dhuhr and Asr. If one deliberately recites the inaudible loudly, audibly, and then recites the audibly salahs inaudibly on purpose, what is the ruling on his salah?
You see, we have wajib for the one who wants to pray to raise his voice and pray Salat al-Subh and Maghrib and Isha, the first 2 rak'ahs, loud, audibly, to show his voice. For the man, of course. For the woman, she's got the option to say it silent or audibly if there's no non-mahram men around her. So for the men, they have to say it loud. They can't say it silent. And likewise with Salat al-Dhuhr and Asr, they have to say it silent. They shouldn't raise their voice. If it's done without intention, mistakenly, that's fine. But with intention, and you know it, and you say it, let's say you're shying, and you want to say Salat Subh, let's say silently, the Salah is mushkil. You have to make sure that you do the Salah according to the wajibat of the Salah. You shouldn't miss anything just because you're shying from your parents or friends, or you're in a gathering, for example. So you try to say Salat Subh or Maghrib Isha silently. No, you can't. You have to raise your voice in these 3 salawat.
Okay. Shaykhna, is it okay to recite Allahu Akbar audibly to maybe alert someone or something, or gain someone's attention, or to warn someone? Is this acceptable?
Yes, there's no objection as long as Allahu Akbar is a dhikr. Part of dhikr, you can say it, Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah. These are all dhikr, because in the salah you can say dhikr, you can say dua, you can say Quran as well. Verses of the Holy Quran. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana. That's the Quran. Or dua, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, and so forth. So you can actually mention in it with the intention of being as a dhikr. That's fine.
Okay. Shaykhna, now we all know that with dog hair your salah is batil if you have dog hair on your clothes. But what about if you have cat hair on you and you didn't know? So there was cat hair on your clothes, you weren't aware, you finished your salah, and now you've noticed, oh, there's actually cat hair on me. Now I believe His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Ishaq al-Fiyadh, I believe he has a fatwa on this. What does Shaykh Ishaq al-Fiyadh say on this?
Yes, the Shaykh mentions that if there was a cat's hair on your clothes or body while you're praying, the salah will be batil. So those who have cats at home and they carry the cats on their, on the chest or on their laps, and part of the hair of the cat is left on their clothes, they have to remove it before the salah. Otherwise, praying with it, the salah will be batil. Although the cat's hair is tahir, it's not najis, but you cannot pray with it. So you have to remove it first and pray.
Okay. Shaykh, I've got a very interesting question here actually. It's coming from the email. Is it permissible for a Muslim country who is in war with a non-believer country to use chemical weapons?
The use of chemical weapons against even non-Muslims is strictly and absolutely forbidden. You cannot use such, mass destruction weapons to kill others. You cannot. No.
Sheikh, what about cutting the trees, burning, poisoning the water, and other destructive acts in order to cause more damage to the enemy?
Again, it's extremely detested and undesirable for the one to damage the environment just to achieve his goal in terms of, winning the war and so forth. You have to respect the environment.
Yes.
Or poisoning the water or poisoning the air, for example.
Yes.
You're not allowed. It's undesirable, especially if it causes harm to other people.
I guess there's an akhlaq to battle and an ethical approach to war, which some actually don't really honor, but war is war, I guess. Sheikhna, when it comes to salah and the place of sujood is najis, what is one to do in that situation?
Well, you cannot prostrate and perform the sujood on a turba or the soil or the sand which has been najis. You have to clean it, you have to remove it, the najasa, and prostrate on it. The most important is that you have to make sure that the area of the sujood is tahir. That's important.
Okay. Sheikhna, I mean, here in the West it's not as common, but I know back home, especially in Muslim countries, living next door to a mosque, is it mandatory upon the resident there to actually attend the mosque for every prayer and so forth?
Yes, we have a narration as a context madmoon, which says لا صلاة لجار المسجد إلا في المسجد, that the salah would not be except for the neighbor of the masjid except inside the masjid. It doesn't mean that it's batil.
Okay.
But it's makruh basically for the one who is, the mosque is next door and he prays at home. So the one who can walk for 2-3 minutes towards inside the mosque, he should pray his salawat inside the mosque. Otherwise it's makruh, which means he would get less thawab. The thawab of praying at home is less than praying inside the mosque. And of course these are the houses of Allah Azza wa Jal, Buyutillah Azza wa Jal. The one should revive these places of worship, to be there, to join the jama'ah. Especially if there's a jama'ah, then the reward will be great. The reward of the jama'ah would be great and great. So if you have with the situation now, which are closed, but inshallah in the near future when they reopen, and the jama'ah reopen, and they start praying this jama'ah, inshallah you join, and inshallah you get the thawab more than praying at home.
Inshallah. Shaykhna, I heard something in regards to like 40 houses in each direction and so forth. Inshallah, discussion for another time on who should be attending the mosque and so forth. Thank you so much, Shaykhna, for all your research and all your hard efforts. And thank you to all of you for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. Inshallah, me and the Shaykh will be back on Wednesday, 6:30 here on Imam Hussein TV 3. Inshallah, you see you then. If you have any questions, please send them in via the WhatsApp. The email address ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively give us a call 0203 515 0199. Inshallah, we'll do our best to answer your questions. See you on Wednesday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Gather queries of your chest with Ahkam SOS.